Welcome everybody. Tri-Town, December 18th, 2013. Shall we do introductions?
Yep.
Sure. Michael Wood, Superintendent of Schools for Neshoba Regional School District.
Nancy Fettersbale, Chair of the Neshoba Regional School Committee.
Don Hawks, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen of Stow.
Michelle Vasquez, Lancaster Finance Committee.
Stan Starr, Board of Selectmen in Lancaster.
Orlando Pacheco, Lancaster Town Administrator.
Mark Sprague, Bolton Board of Selectmen.
Stan Wysocki, Chairman of the Board, Bolton Selectmen.
Terry Abdalian, Chair of the Advisory Committee in Bolton.
Brad Cody, Advisory Committee, Bolton.
And the first order of business, the status of the collective bargaining negotiations.
Well, this was an item I just put on there just to, because I am going to be serving as the representative from the three town boards of selectmen. And it was only just to indicate that the process, which will, is going to be starting up with preliminary meetings very soon, and the actual negotiation, Michael, you believe?
Probably first one will be January-ish.
January-ish.
They say they're ready to start in January.
Does that mean towards the middle to late part of January? Probably?
Yeah, I would think
Okay, and that's with Unit A.
Unit, yes. Just the professional part.
And obviously, anything that is reported on this at future meetings is, it's subject to executive session restrictions, so nothing will be reported that is inappropriate for any public meeting at that point. But just preliminary, just to get it on the radar screen.
Gotcha. The status of the School Space Needs Task Force. This was something I put on there just so we could start to inform everybody else of what was happening there. I don't know, Michael, if you want to give it.
So we had our first meeting 2 weeks ago, and we have our next meeting January 8th. It's well attended. I thank the boards for recommending people. It was a good meeting. We got a lot of discussion. The bulk of the meeting really was to look at the building. So we took a tour. Dr. Graham, the high school principal, gave us a nice tour. And so we're starting to collect some data and share some readings that people have asked for. And we have a few people that were not in attendance but plan to attend our second meeting.
Yeah, I thought the tour was incredibly helpful, and I provided an update to both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, because I think there is a perception that this is another school lab project, which was, we learned some interesting things about the high school. For all its beauty, it does have its share of shortcomings. The cafeteria is not the most desirable size, which certainly causes more lunches in shorter periods, which creates some master scheduling issues. There was the wood shop, some of the art areas that certainly could use some upgrading. At one point, I started to get a little sentimental that the freshmen had to share lockers. I didn't think that was okay, but they seem to be managing quite well. So there are the media center and how it flows. So there's nothing necessarily catastrophic, but certainly some remedies that the building could use. And I think our goal will be to sort of work through that and make sure we provide good, solid information and how the project or any projects that come about would impact the three towns, not just from a financial standpoint, but from a quality of instruction standpoint. Right. And I think that the issue of traveling teachers, I think, is in just the need for more classroom space was something else that was brought up. So there's a lot of scheduling issues. So it will be a long process. I think we're thinking nothing until 2015. But it will be very informative and detailed, I'm sure.
How frequently will you be meeting?
I think we're thinking monthly or bi-monthly.
I think monthly to start,
yeah,
until we start really trying to tackle data and doing the analysis of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I won't necessarily be there at every meeting either. We'll probably have a rotating group sort of from the town, but it will, we'll have somebody there.
And this is designed to take care of the current space needs, but then also anticipate future, and if so, how far are you going out into the future?
Well, the best projections usually will, the people who do the projections usually will tell you they're only good for about 10 years. So it's both space needs in terms of enrollment, but also program needs.
Yeah, we're finding that enrollment data is really tough to pinpoint. Just looking at the Lancaster schools, we had this sort of projection where we were looking at adding classroom space on, those projections were right years ago. And the housing bubble really changed the dynamics of how we need to look at, school enrollment. So I think you had some data, all the information that we were provided, we asked, and I believe is available on the school's website.
Okay.
Try the front page.
Dave?
Yeah, if you're done with this, I have a question back on the negotiations. May I ask?
Sure. I mean, this is Tri-Town. We don't have a real formal structure here.
Back about 15 years ago, when I was involved in Western town government a little bit, the school committee made a point of how they always bargained very hard about the idea of moving their younger teachers, the junior teachers, along more quickly for retention purposes to make the good young ones attractive as possible to stay. And it was always tough because the negotiations were dominated by older teachers who worked their way up in the unions, seniority. But the school committee said they always fought really hard on that one. My memory is the last settlement that you guys did was just everybody gets the same % increase and everything stays the same. And at the time I wondered, but didn't really have enough time to press the point, whether that was not really doing what should be done and without giving away your negotiating strategy and so forth. I wonder if there won't be some attempt to make it, the contract be structured in a way that it'll get younger teachers to think it's a really good idea who are good to stay on with us. And it's a zero-sum game to some degree, so that the older teachers might not get as good a grade as they otherwise might. And so any comments you would have on that issue, I appreciate it.
Well, I can start by saying that we have the whole step system,
Right.
which makes it really complicated. So to say that everybody has the same, whether it's an increase or, increase or staying the same, would happen the same to everybody, but people are at all the different levels of those steps. So I'm not sure if that addresses what you're saying, but the steps are to address the issue that I believe you're talking about. So to incent the younger teachers to get to the next step.
But if you had more of the increase in steps and less of the increase in COLA, that would have the effect, I think, of skewing more of the benefits of the new contract towards the people who are still on the ladder and skewing it away from people who have reached the top of the ladder. And that didn't, I think, happen last time. I think everything went into the COLA last time.
No. I think I'd say two things, Dave. First of all, as Nancy said, the steps currently do favor, after the 3-year probationary period, to really entice our youngest teachers to stay in the district. So those next 3 steps on our current matrix are the highest steps. So it's very attractive and I think lucrative for our teachers to stay. Secondly, while we actually have done a couple of different things, but the last time, so everybody had an even spread for a COLA around the around the matrix. However, what we did last time is we dropped the first step and we added another step so that our top tier teachers who did not get a raise in the last round would have received a raise.
Sorry, well, I just raised an issue of wanting to make sure we incent the younger teachers that we want to keep around.
I just wanted to introduce Susan Smiley from the Lancaster Board of Selectmen, who's joined us. So my reason for putting this on the agenda, I'm sorry, Dave, back to the Space Needs Task Force, was there anything in particular that anyone in this group who's not on the committee would like us to look at in terms of the task force? And then we would, I guess, forward those suggestions over to the school committee.
Nothing at the top of my head at the moment.
Well, you know how to get a hold of me if you do.
What was, I'm sorry.
Well, if there was anything in particular that folks outside of the task force thought we should be looking at outside of what's already been mentioned. I mean, certainly the initial meeting was very good in terms of highlighting some of at least the perceived deficiencies in the building. Mm-hmm. And that's a baseline, a good step, and then trying to project what your future needs are. But beyond that, I mean, every town has its own middle school and elementary school and those needs, and sort of looking at the big picture, how do we pay for all that on top of everything else? So that's why I bring it up.
Well, I think the biggest concern or unknown or the invisible elephant in the room maybe is the possibility of the requirement for significant expansion at some point. I know in Stow we spent, what was the final figure on Saturday?
28 million.
28 million for an addition and renovation of one of our schools to combine the two. So if you're looking at possibility of, certainly within 10 years, I would think it's entirely within the realm of possibility. We're going to be needing more space. And I would certainly hope it wouldn't be, we need a new high school, but additions to it. So I think that the main thing that folks in Stow at least are talking about is at a time when we're facing 2 or possibly 3 major capital projects. We're just going to the design stage probably next May at town meeting, which means maybe a year or 2 if they get approved, fire station, library, and community center. Some of those too, we could be getting a major whack in our tax rate as those bonds come online. And so that you're looking at, say, 2 or 3 years down the road, and if this space study comes up and says, well, in 5 years or 6 or 7, we're going to be needing X million dollars of addition. I think that's the main concern we're looking at. So,
understood. And Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the school committee is not saying anybody's going to be forced to pay for something that town meeting doesn't authorize, but there is, at least from the school committee standpoint, the feeling of a fiduciary obligation to at least notify its communities that, here's your high school, it is the cornerstone of your educational system. It has these deficiencies. How it's dealt with might not be one large-scale project. It might be a number of small projects. I mean, we're not, from that first meeting, I wouldn't be able to gauge any of that information because...
No, I'm saying down the road, if you're asking for what sort of valuable information are we looking for, that would be it. But I will say, it's a good, I appreciate the step of this committee, although it might be somewhat unwieldy at times to try to get all of the appropriate players at the table. But I think it's a recognition that we each in our individual towns have to do capital planning and projections. And it certainly is good to see that this process is starting up to give us insight so that we can build whatever comes out of this down the road, whether it's adding classrooms or even more major projects, as much notification as we can, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the idea, is at least,
Yeah.
let's keep the information out there and try to sort of strategize jointly.
Just last question, I think I asked a question about this tri-town meeting when I first became a selectman, was in town building growth projections, their planners refer to it as build-out. In other words, what's the population of Stow likely to be at maximum?
Right.
And I think the question I posed to you at one of the early meetings was, what's the maximum enrollment that you could see, given your current space needs, even, it might not be optimum. And I think the number was 1250?
Yeah,
And
that's
you were,
the
at the
number
time,
we
you were
thrown
about
around. Yeah.
1125?
Yeah.
Is that number still about the same, or has it changed in the last?
We're currently at
33?
1033.
So it went down from last year? I think you said it was
No,
11 and a
last
quarter,
year
I thought.
was
Counting school choice.
1019, so we had a slight uptick.
Okay, I must have the wrong number in mind then. So we've got a couple of hundred cushion before
Yeah.
you start to bulge at the seams.
Right. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, what's the percentage of school choice students?
We have 100 students, so it's a little under 10%.
Is that a cap, or is it just
That's a
happen
cap.
to be 100?
It's a cap.
It's a cap at the high school.
Mhm.
Anything else? Michael, if you wouldn't mind giving us an update on the concession stand project at the field?
Sure, it's slow but sure. Siding went on today, this week, or it started last week, actually. So we're closing in. I think they're about to, they did the pour of the floor just before that. Roof is on completely. I think we've sealed
Just in
that.
time for the snow?
Just in time for the snow. So we're hopeful that we'll have it open for the spring for a ribbon cutting.
And sort of the estimated cost on that?
So we had a bond for the entire project. For just the concession stand is, let's see, it would be a little under 250,000. About 250,000.
And that's with all the contents inside it?
That's with everything, soups and nuts, complete.
And how many bathroom facilities are included in
There were,
I think it's 6 and 6. Is it? Or 4
no,
and 4?
I thought it was,
3 and 3?
I think it was 3 and
3
3.
and 3.
Yeah.
We had to reduce from our original plan. I think originally we had 6 and 6, and we had to reduce it because we're contained within our DEP, for DEP reasons, within our zone 1, and so we had to reduce it.
Did I read somewhere that there was a possibility that even with this new facility, and perhaps even because of the reduced numbers, that there still might be reliance on the ones in the building?
We'll still have to keep the
Still
building
have it
open,
if
yeah.
it's a big crowd, yeah.
That was part of the big objective, I think, was to keep
Absolutely,
people out of the
yeah.
building for security
Yeah.
reasons.
I think we'll be able to do it for the most part, but we'll have to see. Certain games we'll have to plan for, based on what we expect for crowds and so forth. But we have to have bathrooms. We might look at another solution in terms of, because we have a lot of rentals now, so we might create a bank of porta potties in an area toward the middle of the field where we were originally thinking the concession stand would go, and make that more of a plaza walkway. So that might be temporary solutions during game, the height of the fall season for where we have soccer and lacrosse and football going on.
Because relying on the in-building bathroom facilities, does that add additional costs for janitorial and security coverage?
Not really, but it's just opens us up that much more because the way we have to keep the building unlocked, we can pretty well lock it down so they're only in the corridor. But we have one door that is a fire door, so it actually opens on that side to go back into the school, and it can't be locked. So, and there's a kind of a quirk in the architecture of our school where there's a passway that has no door, and so they could go back, get into the school. So,
Not too desirable.
right. So we don't advertise it, but so edit that one out.
Overall, are you on budget?
Yes.
So the original bond is covering the full cost?
The original bond is not covering the full
Okay,
cost.
so we're not on budget?
Well, once,
We're not on what the town's originally approved, I guess is the question.
Correct, we were 70,000 over, I think, over.
right, so we were, but we've known that since we got the bids for the project of the field. We've known that really from the get-go. Once we were starting in and finishing some of the work that was required because of the, when they finished the excavation, the required design, and the needed excavation that required us to move the stadium piece. So, the other side, the visiting side, so now we have actually two very nice fields because we have two very nice stadium seats available. So as soon as that happened, we knew we were going to have to finish that project, obviously, and then we'd have to add backfill to do the concession stand.
So it's approximately, how much was the total project over the bond?
So we'll be about 140,000 that we'll absorb in our budget.
That's gonna be,
Yep.
is that from your next year's reserve fund in effect? Is that what
No,
it's gonna be?
we hope not. We hope to economize through everything from oil, heat, our gas, propane. I was gonna say plowing, but that's not necessarily gonna happen now. But, we'll look for those efficiencies within the facilities budget and other projects that we've had planned.
Wasn't the main part of the field slightly under? Or
The main part of the field, you mean the turf part?
yeah,
I'd have to go
I
back and
thought
check.
that
I
came in
don't.
slightly under.
So maybe that was planned in anticipation of going over on the concession stand? You guys were foreseeing that? Is that the idea?
Well, from a long time ago in the process, the concession stand was taken out of the budget. And there was talk for a while about it, there being fundraising for that particular portion of the project.
Which
And-
would have been a great idea.
Well, and there were bricks sold, I don't know what the total dollar
I can get that for you. I don't
amount
have it
was,
on my head,
but there absolutely was fundraising done.
And it continues to go on. Most of the niceties, the walkway, things like that, are coming from that fundraising.
So fair to say, if it had not been some fundraising, the overage would have been higher than 140,
Oh,
obviously.
sure.
So it'd be good to get that number, just to, idea. So.
And the 140 over was just a function of construction, like if I had a contractor on my house and he starts ripping apart something and unforeseen, that's where this 140 over came?
Exactly. That part about creating the final exterior support system on the far field between the stadium field and the girls' field hockey field turned out to be more involved than we thought. So that's where we had to pick up the pieces.
And then the structure itself was a little more than originally anticipated, because it was going to be a modular unit, and then it had to be built
Right.
from scratch.
We couldn't get the coding.
Okay. School, town budget projections. I don't know where everybody else is. Our finance committee met Monday, and I think we've got some guidance now as to what the town departments are gonna have to do for budgets. I think, are we level service?
We're hoping for level services, but could be level funding possibly, depending on what our capital expenditures come in. You know, we're requesting capital requests from all the different departments, and we're trying to get a capital budget planned. So we'll have to wait and see what comes in over the next month or so.
And I'll be sending those out, I believe, early January, within the next couple of weeks, and so I'll send those to you as well. Michael, although in talking with George, I don't think there's going to be any deviation from previous capital submissions, but in case.
Right.
But yeah, so far that's our direction. I don't know if Bolton, Stow, do schools care to add any different?
Bolton, budgets are in. We should be having them, I think the select board and advisory will see them this week sometime. It's level funded budgets requested from all of our departments. Capital budgets are expected in the beginning of January, so we'll start to see those. There's already some that we're aware of some, capital expenditures that are desired by different departments and different groups. So we're just, we start the process, and we're very conservative as to what we do, and take a look at how people are spending. We've asked that if anybody has additional items that they want on their, feel that they need, that they bring that forward and support it.
Christine?
No, that's been the message.
Yeah.
I mean, there are potentially a couple of capital items that are coming up that I believe the selectmen are going to push back on vigorously.
Big ones, right?
Our
Big ones,
our
yes.
process runs through our town administrator's office. He prepares the budget rather than the board. So he is in receipt now of the departmental requests, and then schedules meetings with each of the departments and crafts the budget from there. I guess one subsidiary or part of that I would be interested in, to the extent anything is public knowledge. We have collective bargaining with our various units. Actually, we have one fewer bargaining unit in Stow than we had a year ago. Our clerical and support staff at Town Hall decertified last year. So there's one less contract, but Mr. Wrigley's practice has been, in the 20-plus years that he's been there, through obviously a lot of different changes in the board and support for it, is to do only 1 year collective bargaining agreements with all of our units. And that is what he will be doing again this year. He is believed, and I think it's been borne out over the years, that it gives you more flexibility if something happens 3 years down the road, to be able to reflect that in the bargaining with the town units.
More power to you. It takes us 3 years to do a 3-year contract. So.
Get done way before.
Have you ever been to mediation through that process? Have you had that drawn out? Usually involves a safety reconciliation.
To some degree, yeah.
Yeah. How about the union situation?
We have one fewer bargaining unit as well through regionalization.
Which one was that? Which?
Dispatchers.
Oh, okay.
Dispatchers are now, we've regionalized with Lunenburg, Harvard, and Devens in the Department of Defense. So we'll be negotiating DPW, police, and fire, and so that complicates trying to sort of formulate a budget without knowing how to deal with that personnel expense, but I'm sure in due time, we'll get to a point where we'll have a number that I think we're confident with. Whether the other side is confident with it, I don't know.
But you're negotiating contracts at beginning of July 1 for all those?
Yep, so all 3 collective bargaining units contracts expire June 30th.
Were they 1 year or multi?
They're 3-year.
3-year multi. Stan, what were yours?
3 years.
3 years, expiring this June as well?
Yes.
So in 2017, they'll have it resolved.
That's right.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's the plan.
The item number 5, which was the, I'm sorry, schools.
We're, like Don described, I'm actually this week meeting with all the departments. We'll spend the next 2 weeks crafting the budget, and we'll launch on January 28th.
Okay.
That's at the school committee meeting on January 28th?
Yes, it is.
Correct.
And then that February 1st is the
At each department
Present.
reports out.
And that budget will reflect the 140 in savings that you're, inefficiencies that you're getting to pay for the concession stand?
No, because that's the FY14 budget.
Okay. So where are those, because I'm confused where the extra money for the concession stand is coming from then. Which budget year is that in?
FY14.
Okay. So for FY15, we'll see the 140,000 in savings.
I'm not sure how you're doing your math.
Well,
Yeah.
you're saying you're paying it for it through efficiencies in oil and propane and all, and electricity and such. So those savings should continue on past when you
Oh.
paid for this concession stand.
Some might not, depending, but where they do, we can put them out.
Anything else?
I think there was some discussion at a previous selectmen's meeting when Nancy had come, the new school committee rep, and Mark had commented on the fact that, you somehow found, we're hearing now it's 140. The last time we heard it was $70,000 over, so nowadays it's double that now. But, how you were able to find 140,000 to fund something, that is as over budget as it is. I mean, as Mark made the comment that when we have a situation in Bolton where a department goes over budget, the process is to bring that before both the selectmen and the advisory committee to get sort of special dispensation to take it out of one or more of a number of funds before it's actually spent. And I guess Mark was sort of indicating that there wasn't necessarily this check and balance of asking permission or just verifying that you need this extra money. You just yanked it out of some other accounts to deal with it. There was a concern on our part, especially on the part of Mark, about that.
Well, I think that, first of all, the accounting in the school department is slightly different, it sounds like. We have charted accounts, and so the accounts for facilities is the entire account with the exception of I think it's fuel. So it allows for, there are different lines in those accounts. So as long as the entire account doesn't go over, we don't have to do transfers. But every transfer that we do to account for costs is approved by the school committee.
So does that answer?
So, and we generally do those at the end of the year. If we need to do them before, if the account's going over, then it'll happen before, but generally we don't do that.
Will you need to be asking for approval for this 140?
I don't think so. But again, because we're targeting the accounts that have fluctuation.
So you have
Such
an
as-
extra 140,000 in your facility budget that you wouldn't have necessarily needed?
No, but we target based on prior years, for example, for oil. So if we spend less on oil, that's where that money would come from. And there are efficiencies that we get from projects, either because we decide not to do them or because we can't do them because we haven't got the permits, weren't able to, or we have changed the format of something. So it does, certain projects don't get done to their full extent.
So are there other projects that you're not completing in order to cover
Right now,
this?
we haven't taken anything off the drawing board, so we're proceeding. So
So hopefully next year, maybe the facilities budget would go
On the
down.
140.
Well, because it is facilities, and part of the facilities are scheduled maintenance, so what you may find is that it doesn't go down, but it doesn't increase, but we've decided to do projects. For example, if we move forward on a small project, a roof project at the high school where we just had the canvassing of the roof done, and that's, $300,000. So there's the 140 embedded in that 300,000, so you may see 160,000 more in the facilities budget because it's going to take a $300,000 piece to do scheduled maintenance around the roof.
But, I think it's this type of questioning and this, trying to understand all this.
Sure.
On why, I put on the next bullet point, which is a separate advisory board. And I'm willing to go several different ways on this. Ideally, I feel that the best way to get this accomplished would to have your buy-in on this. But I think, being on the advisory board, where we spend from January to right up until the town meeting, bringing in every department, going line item by line item. But for all intents and purposes, it's really semantics, because we're waiting for your number, and you guys really drive the process. And from my understanding, it should be the other way around, that these three towns all contribute into this high school in this district. And it should be the towns that are driving the process as opposed to the school driving the towns. And I understand within your budget, there's also fixed costs that you can't get around. But it still doesn't change the fact that when we get your number, we've got to accommodate, and we are hammering our departments. And so what I would like to see, and it's because of this overrun on the concession stand, it's forgetting about counting a kindergarten class. You guys are, I think, heavily taxed. So I'm proposing that we come up with an idea to help you guys out, and have a greater communication across all three towns. So to this gentleman's point, where they're facing capital projects, what we were dealing with 4 or 5 years ago. Well, I think it's a better idea to know what's kind of going on in the other towns. They can know what's going on in us. We've got a better idea what's going on with you guys. And so, can we do that? To Mark's point, with this overrun, it's the purchase of the plow truck. I looked through the website. I couldn't find in the meeting notes any discussion about the purchase of a truck for plowing. And but what I do know is when the DPW chief comes before us, we hammer him, and he's got to go through a whole litany to get a plow truck. And you guys, in the business of education, a plow truck appears. And I don't understand it. I don't understand why that just isn't farmed out to a contractor. But you went out and bought a plow truck with a sander, and I don't get it. We approved for money for a new boiler at Emerson, a new hot water heater at Sawyer, or vice versa. I can never keep the damn thing straight. But right on the website, RFP canceled until further notice. I mean, that's $100,000. And I get it, you're in a $44 million budget, so snowflake off an iceberg, who cares? But we went through an awful lot to find that $100,000. And it's just sitting there. You guys haven't done anything. And we heard from your facilities guy on how great it would be to have a new boiler, because efficiencies, to your point, sir. And the bid process is stalled. The idea of another air conditioner. My thought is save your time No, it's not gonna happen. Unless you guys turn around and say, hey, you know what, here's Bolton's assessment, 1/3, whatever the hell the formula is. The district will kick in that towards the cost of an AC for Sawyer, and then we can talk, maybe. But there just seems, if it's a perception issue, fine. That there's a black hole, or maybe there is. I think we all should have a better understanding, or as a group, get a better understanding of all of this coming together, because there's no way you guys should be wagging our tail. It should be the other way around.
Well, I take offense to that. We're not wagging anybody's tail. And frankly, sir, we run a very professional organization. And you, as 3 towns, do a fabulous job of supporting education in the 3 towns. But the way public schools are run is through a professional organization by statute. And you don't have the rights to go through and worry about whether we buy a plow truck or not, as a town. That's not how it works. The school committee does. And if you went and attended our meetings last February, you would have heard our director of facilities talk about a plow truck. And yes, we only do it once, because it's efficient to do it once, and describe the need, address it. If they agree, they agree. If they don't agree, and they're elected voters by the voters, then it doesn't get bought, and we address it. I don't know specifically. I just spoke to the facilities director the other day about the project. I don't know why the RFP says it's canceled there. I'll look into that, but we have every intention of doing it. And it will be spent during this timeline. So the March 15th date is by regional agreement, precedes Nancy, precedes me. The 3 communities, along with the school committee at the time, wrote that. So if you want an earlier number, we could look at changing the regional agreement. But frankly, most of us would like that later. And I would think you would want that later. Because the later we wait for state information, the more likely we have more accurate figures out of state government. And that's better for the towns. So the dog is the state government, not the district. And we have public meetings, and they're posted, and you are more than welcome to come to any one of them.
Yeah, and I mean, that is, and I understand that, and there's a lot of information on the web, but we're already taking up a lot of our time with other meetings.
And we're more than happy to come to
And
your
I know
meetings.
you guys are too.
That's
And
exactly why you don't need to have these layers of inefficiency. How many people need to go over with a fine-tooth comb whether or not we're gonna spend $500 on new whiteboards this year? I mean, we've got professionals that we pay a good salary to do that for us. We have a $45 million budget. If I'm gonna go home every night and look at every single one of those numbers and then you're gonna do it after me, is that efficient? That's just stupid.
No, I'm okay with taking that off your plate.
Yeah, but
you know what?
You're counter to state law. You cannot have an advisory committee controlling the school budget. I mean, that's a dream that will never happen.
If you want that role,
but if you
run
want to
for
be on the
school
school committee, I think you ought to run in May, because that's the way to make those changes in the school budget.
Yeah, and again, I you know, when I first proposed this, you know, that was the game plan of undoing that charter and coming up with a game plan. But, you know, clearly a heavy road to hoe. Again, I'm simply looking for some additional open communication between you folks, along with all of these individuals in this room.
Come to our
So
meetings.
That's why
Come to our meetings.
I think every time we have this discussion, and we have it all the time, it's when the towns are asking for some additional information, the response is, come to our meetings and read our minutes. I think there needs to be a little bit more communication in this forum discussing some of those things that might be important. Not necessarily everything in detail, but there needs to be some, you know, we're planning on doing this, that, and the other kind of thing. And to be honest, that doesn't occur in these meetings. In many cases, this is probably one of the best attended Tri-Town meetings in years.
Well, we like having you, so keep on coming.
Exactly.
I think you bring up a great point. I think we need to figure out what do we want to have happen in our Tri-Town meetings, and what is the purpose of them? And is it to share information? And if that's the case, then we could be doing it in more efficient ways. And we don't say read the minutes for our meetings. We say come to our meetings, participate, join in with us, and come to our budget workshops. We always invite you guys. Everybody is welcome to come. And when the plow comes up, you can say, I don't think we should have a plow. And then that can be taken into consideration. But to be invited to these kinds of open forums, these workshops, not come, and then
Well, we can't come to the Tuesday meetings because we're in Tuesday meetings. So we're unable, the advisory committee meets on Tuesday nights from January until town meeting. So we're unable to do that.
So-
We can't even spare a person on a regular basis because we need our quorum. So it's a difficult thing, so that coming to the meetings is just not an option
our
as long as
Saturday
you're-
morning workshop.
Well, that's
Yeah.
fine. That's one meeting a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be there. I can
And-
guarantee you that we'll be there.
And maybe we need to look at, I don't know, is it possible to change advisories meetings? We can't change our meetings for the year now. We could look at it to change for next year, but our meeting schedule is set for.
Our meeting schedule's set
Entire
until May.
year.
Yeah, we've got everybody lined up and we're all set until May.
Okay.
So coming to the meetings, but this is a good forum, and I know you think it's repetitive maybe to say the same thing over again, but for many of us, this is where we get together, and I've been to a few tri-towns, not as many as you have, I'm sure, Stan, but I've never seen a turnout like this. But if we know that there's going to be a really good give and take, information from each of the towns, information, this kind of sharing of what we're looking for and bringing everything to the table here, it's a worthwhile meeting to come to. I don't think it's a wasted meeting at all. I don't think it's repetitive because so many of us can't make it to another meeting, especially if it's on the same night that we're meeting.
Mr. Lindsay wanted to make a...
I wonder if sending out right before a tri-town meeting, the minutes of the most recent school committee meeting might allow people to raise questions in this meeting. In other words, you discussed such and such and you decided so-and-so, and that seems strange to me, why did you do that? And then because right now, I think most of the people here don't have much idea what the school committee's been doing recently. And then we finally find out when we get the budget figures, or we sort of hear that something's over budget, like the concession stand, and whereas if those who wanted, obviously mandatory reading, but those who wanted to take a look at the most recent minutes would have an opportunity to question why you decided what you did.
I'll be the new kid in the block once to chip in a few sentences here, I guess, along the way, listening to both sides of the conversation. And I agree with a lot of the things that have been said here. And it's almost, I don't know, I don't want to become defensive. I don't want anyone else to become defensive. But is there a possibility, does it make any sense to, I hate to use the word, subcommittee, that if there's some substantial things that change, and I've heard about this 140 override right along, and I agree with everything that's been said, understanding the defense of the same. Is there some way of communicating, other than attending school committee meetings? I have a full plate. We all have full plates. We can't get to your meetings. I'm lucky to get to my own meetings. So I can share everyone's concern. I'm involved with a lot of items. Is there some better ways of communication? Because I sense the anxiety, the frustrations. We're all doing what we're doing best. We're doing our jobs. But is there some method? Has there been some methodology in the past that would make any sense if something substantial happens? And I consider a 140,000K override a substantial change. And I know you can do what you can do with your budget because it's your budget. I understand that. And I don't think the challenge was, are you entitled to do it? You are entitled to it. But should you be sharing that information with others in a format that we can get it in advance rather than having to attend a meeting? And I don't know what the answer is. I've got 7 months of experience, so what do I know? But I've served on finance committees in 2 different towns. So that's where I'm coming from, and I can see both sides of it.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of observations about this financial stuff. And one is that on the school committee meeting to go over the budget last year, I think it was about 5.5 hours long. Is that about right? And you went over a $46 million budget, which means that you passed judgment on $1 million every 7 minutes.
That's not true, Bob. Because
Non-stop.
Well, but that's a really inaccurate statement, because 80% of that $45 million budget is in salaries. So all we were going over in that 5.5-hour session were all the fixed, the capital expenses and the maintenance, and it was only less than 20% of the $45 million budget that we were working on in that 5.5-hour workshop. And prior to our being in that 5.5-hour workshop, all of the professionals that we pay good money to were busy working in meetings weekly, honing those budgets before we even got to the workshop. Okay, so it is totally unfair to be saying that.
Well,
and I don't mean to be defensive, but I think there has to be a better understanding of the process and what we need, what is going on. Because, but to jump to that conclusion and to assume that our administrators aren't professional or that your school committee isn't doing their job.
You're reading into what I'm saying and not letting me finish.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay? You know, to your point about the capital versus salary, we have about a $20 million budget, and we spend Tuesday nights, from January to April, going over the 30% of our budget that's not the school committee. And that includes, you know, salaries and all that other stuff. But we're still putting in 30 hours to go into a much smaller budget than you go over. And I think that to use the parallel with Bolton, the advisory committee in Bolton, the town manager puts together the budget, collects the information, the finance committee, advisory committee reviews it, but it's ultimately the selectmen's budget. The advisory committee really has no power. It has a lot of influence, but it has no power directly over the budget. We can question, we can opine, we can make public, but we can't make a final decision. And my view of this advisory committee is I think the school district needs something similar. It's not to have someone from the Bolton Advisory Committee or the Bolton Board of Selectmen or Capital Projects be on that committee. It could be, well, the mechanics of how that group of people gets determined is different. But it would be more public. I think there'd be more detailed questions. And I think that the school district, as well as the leaders of other towns, should consider that as something that would help the education. Now, this isn't just a question of the school district is spending too much or the school district isn't spending enough. It's the school district, can the school district get by with more help than it currently has? Can other people contribute, other volunteers contribute to the budget process? This is not to take anything away from the professionals in the school district. We have professionals in our staff too. We still feel that as citizens, we should go over their budgets and as citizens understand them. And so that's to me, that is what I would like to put forward here. Not so much for how you're going to implement it, but for consideration here about what a group like that does report to the school committee but is separate from the school committee, be helpful to the process.
Yeah, Nancy, your explanation on what leads up to that Saturday meeting, that was great. First I ever heard of it. So if there's, and maybe it's on the website somewhere, but, I've heard you get up in front of town meeting and speak. That would have been a great comment to make. So if there's, to Bob's point, if there's just more, if there can just be more communication, and I'm not accusing you of mismanaging the money, it's just, I am looking at this, and it's frustrating from our standpoint because of what we go through with each town department, and I get it, you guys are bigger, but it seems like the money is just thrown around. That I'm not implying that you're mismanaging it. All I'm saying is, man, the fact of the matter is the bigger issue in this room is the 80% that you guys can't control on benefits and salaries. I mean, we simply need to look at municipalities around this country, and I'm looking forward to you guys having a conversation and talking to the unions in the district about moving from a DB to a DC plan and that, because it has to move there. So that's the bigger issue in this whole room, is the 80% you can't control, but that gets thrown on to the town. But in the meantime, can we all, look at a little more detail so that maybe there's a conversation with Bolton, if we're looking at a big capital item, but we're having a conversation with Stow, hey, here's what we've got going online. Oh, by the way, here's what the school is presenting, so we don't, get hammered like these guys are right now. That's all I'm saying. Can we continue this conversation in some manner and be more collaborative?
Well, first of all, let me tell you all the ways we are already collaborative, and let's utilize the ways we already have. We meet with every capital committee in each of the 3 towns annually and review their capital and our capital with them, so they know. We offer to come to any advisory meeting and finance committee meeting in each of the towns and present our budgets and share with them and gather input. We often present here at Tri-Town the budget and have at least one meeting where we have a discussion of it. We have a finance committee, which would be the same as your advisory committee, a subcommittee of the school committee. They have opportunity to talk about all the finances that go on for the board.
And that subcommittee meets every 2 weeks.
Are those volunteers, or are they?
They're school committee
School
members.
committee members.
But they're school committee members,
Right.
as well as finance.
Right.
Yes, it's a subcommittee of the school
Subcommittee.
committee.
So they're not separate
Right.
from it.
Correct.
And we do control that 80%. We have renegotiated our insurances. I think on record, we've done at least 3 times in my tenure there to improve our rates. And we've controlled costs overall. I know it's relative in terms of what you're probably looking at in terms of the overall cost. But in terms of peers, we've controlled costs. So it's not responsible to throw it out that we're not controlling it, because we are, because it could have been far worse. But it is what it is, and I know it's a big number, but we are controlling it. And all of those pieces of information go through the school committee, and they know about it. And we're happy to share them in more celebratory ways with this group as well. The challenge of communication, everybody can say they want more communication, but really they only want to know what they think they don't know when they find out something they think they should have known. You'll have to watch the tape to follow that one along. Right? I mean, you
say that again. I dare you.
That's right. I mean, that's when people, in my experience, complain about communication. When they learn something they think they should have known, but they didn't know. But to predict that is something that you would have been upset about, but you would not have been upset about, is difficult to do. But all of those pieces of information have been made public. They've been discussed at public meetings several times. We report out on the concession stand, everything that's on here, we report out as we can in terms of collective bargaining. So those pieces of information are out there. So other layers of other committees, I don't think are really the avenue that we want to go. If you want to have particular questions that you want to pose when we come to Tri-Town, I'm more than happy. I mean, we try to be as transparent as we possibly can. Everything is put on our website that we publish. Everything. There's nothing that you can't get from us. So I'm more than happy to give you anything you want to know.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm not much more experienced than you as far as being a new kid on the block, about a year more. But my understanding, when I first got on the board and was designated as Stow's liaison to Tri-Town, I said, well, what is this creature? What is, it's...
That's punishment, Don.
Well, I'm incurring other punishments as well. But my understanding was that do you recall the origin? Was it before your time, I believe, Michael?
I believe Tri-Town, yes, it did start before I came on, and then it died out. This is my 11th. And then it kind of died out, and then I started to resurrect it at the advice of Ken Troop, actually.
Okay. But my understanding is it accomplishes without legal structure what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
It provides and perhaps we haven't taken advantage of this more recently. I think you're correct that there is legal issues here. If we had a town council for the Tri-Town, he would probably say, you can't do that because
we essentially do.
General law. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I forgot you had the Esquire. But I think it can, with some, perhaps some re-engineering and reinvigoration, work with the school department in a way that will answer some of these questions. So it isn't, so we don't come in here thinking it's an aha moment, on something, because it really isn't helpful for anybody. We want to, I agree with Michael, it's the communication and perception of communication, I think, is as much as anything. One thing that I would like to see involved in Tri-Town, and I think this is not anything that has not been stated by others, and I'm very glad to see Nancy here tonight. I've been coming to the meetings for a year and a half, and only on a handful of occasions have I seen school committee members. I'm not denigrating the superintendent and Mr. King. When they come, they're the nuts and bolts guys, but I think sometimes it's helpful for us to see our own representatives at these meetings, and perhaps through the flavor of the questioning, they might raise certain questions because they were raised and discussed here. We can't legally say, now go back and do this, but they may say, gee, our people in our town are facing the following, and we weren't aware of it, but we found out from our Tri-Town people. Because we don't have any mechanism on a regular basis, at least in Stow, to meet with the selectmen and the school committee. Maybe that's something each town should try to do I don't know whether other folks do, but we don't. So the only time we see our school committee representatives are when they have something they want to get on our agenda and discuss. But this, I think, is a forum that was originally intended not just to include the school administration, but hopefully the school committee members as well. So I hope that this may be the precursor of better communication through Tri-Town.
Well, we in Bolton have instituted asking our school committee representatives to come to a selectmen's meeting at least once a quarter. So we've started that.
Did all three of you members?
We have two.
We only have two.
You have two.
It's a point of contention.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, next time.
Thanks, Don.
Funny you should bring that up.
Let's, that wasn't on the agenda, but
It is.
Next time.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, I actually did get a request for that on the agenda.
Excellent.
Well, sorry.
Fold them in.
Go ahead.
I was just going to respond
Not last meeting.
to your comment about school committee participation. And I will say, we have a policy, and we've tried to instill it anyway, that wherever the town is hosting the Tri-Town meeting, at least one rep from that town will attend that meeting. And if we need to fix that or change that, then we should talk about that. But I think that part of what would help is if we had a better understanding for what we were gonna do at the Tri-Town meeting, because I'll be totally honest with you, it has a history of being a finger-pointing, not-so-pleasant experience.
Shooting gallery.
And if, I think that that's part of the reluctance of people to come, to be totally honest with you. And if it was more of a, let's be collaborative, let's work together, and let's see how we can help each other by communicating and meeting together, then you'd probably see a lot more people on our committee.
Well, I think it's safe to assume that there needs to be an element of collegiality and
Yeah,
we might disagree without being disagreeable. I think is
right.
something
I mean, I
always tried.
don't know if you mind that I said that, but
No, I think that's true.
but I think it's been
Current.
there's been some accosting going on, and it's not all that pleasant.
Yes?
One minor thing, the finance subcommittee of the school committee, that's an open meeting, so if anyone wanted to
Yes.
go to it, they could.
Tuesdays.
I wonder,
At 5:45.
It's the same
5:30
night as the
is-
school committee meeting?
Yes, it's just
It
before.
takes place before the school committee. Or I'm sorry, I
5:30?
got the wrong, 5:15,
We start at 5:30.
5:30. Sorry.
I went to all of the school committee meetings the first year I was a selectman because they were all on different dates. And that was a very useful thing to do. It was also,
I was so impressed by that, Dave.
it was also unsustainable. If you could ever find each board of selectmen a citizen volunteer who wasn't on any other committee in town, but would have the task of going to all of the school committee meetings, and then maybe reporting every other meeting to the selectmen, you could get sort of that input that Brad is talking about, I think. And it's probably a pipe dream, but if all three towns could find such a person.
Well, I think Bolton found their person.
I come to your meetings.
I think his hand might be going up again.
Yeah.
But, then you would sort of have the kind of thing Brad was talking about, if you had one rep from each town whose only job was to go to school committee meetings, and I think that would be sustainable if that were your only job.
I think that's a great idea.
You might be getting the kind of input Brad is talking about.
I think.
Plus, what was great from my point of view, if you were doing something I didn't agree with, I would let you know about it.
You did?
Yeah. And sometimes it would have some influence and sometimes it wouldn't, but
Right.
it was useful in both directions, I think. I mean, even if we disagreed, I knew pretty early on in the process what it was I disagreed about. And I think one of the things Brad and the others are talking about is unless you go to all the meetings, you don't know about it till fairly late in the process. And as Michael was saying, that's when people get upset, because they thought they should have learned about it sooner. And the way to learn about it sooner is either to go to or have somebody whose job it is to go to all those meetings.
Don?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I think that is a great idea if we can find such a
If you can find such a
dedicated
person,
public
yeah.
servant. But
We
if,
used to call them reporters, but, you know.
How many of those around?
Well, I know Bolton Common is going down, it's very sad.
And then send another
but if you
representative.
could have that level of communication to our boards, I mean, frankly, it's a bit perplexing to me, even a year and a half in, coming to Tri-Towns. There was an incident a couple of months ago. We didn't have a Tri-Town meeting in Bolton, I believe, when it was Bolton's turn. Nobody submitted agenda items. But these agenda items, I mean, they're kind of like, when I'm a chairman of the board, I work with the town administrator on our agenda. But the other board members don't necessarily know when they come to the selectmen's meeting, because we can't deliberate. All we can talk is about the schedule, it's open meeting law. So they don't know, my fellow selectmen, when they're coming to see item X on the agenda, what it's going to be. So we're kind of in the same situation here, because what are we? Are we subject to the open meeting law here? It's an unofficial organization, it's not a governmental body.
Well, you certainly have a quorum of certain boards and committees, which is why I always make it a point, at least when we're hosting, to try to have it recorded so there's an official record.
But I think that if you got that kind of communication coming back to the boards, each board might say, oh, this item that they discussed last time from Sam Smith, our reporter back on this, we would like to have that as an agenda item so that when I as chair submit items for Tri-Town, I would have some basis in doing it. Well, it isn't just what's coming out of my head, but the board's collective wisdom.
Okay.
So I have a question, there's a lot of good discussion on this. Are we gonna take away any actions for better improved collaboration? I think we've heard a lot of good points. What are our actions for that next meeting? And how do we develop that next agenda? Do we solicit school committee attendance at these? I've never even met my school committee representative here in Lancaster, so, you know, and do we go off each town and make a recommendation as to who we're gonna bring forth for that finance meeting at Tuesdays at 5:30? If we don't walk away with actions, then I'm not sure we spent our time wisely or have anything better for the next meeting.
Well, I know for the Lancaster Finance Committee, we do ask our school committees to come in early, and we've already actually had our representative come in.
Yeah.
And it was a very good discussion. We explained our concerns and needs and relayed them to her and asked her to bring school committee concerns and needs to us so that we would know ahead of time and have a little bit of foresight as far as what's coming up. Because, as we said, school budget is a very, very significant part of our budget and kind of drives the rest of our budget. So we kind of want a little bit of, foresight as far as what's coming up. So we know, what planning do we do? Do we have to scale back on capital planning? We really want to implement a capital plan, and I'm sure the other towns want to do the same. So being able to have a little bit of foresight, here's stuff that's coming up in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, to know so we can plan our other projects around this. So I know we've been trying to be proactive as far as pulling the school committee in with us, and I know we would like to have them come in. I know we've had you come in before, so I'm not sure if we necessarily need a reporter. I mean, that's what I think our school committee members are supposed to be. They're representing the town to the schools, so I think maybe we need to utilize our school committee members a little bit more, whether it be at the finance committee level or at the selectman board level. So.
Dave?
While it's true that our school reps are legally our school reps, you sort of get to this you stand where you sit kind of thing. And I've been pretty heavily involved for 8 or 9 years now. And there is always a tension between a town's school reps and its finance committee, and something of a tension between the selectmen and the school reps. Because they all represent the same people, but they kind of represent different interests.
I agree.
And so.
But none of them print money.
Right. Well, what I was leading to is that's why someone sort of representing the Board of Selectmen's point of view would go to the school committee meetings, because I think they have a different take on it than a school rep would have, even though theoretically they're all.
I would think my school rep is here to represent me and my town, not strictly the school committee. As a Lancaster school committee member, I would think they're representing the Lancaster interests.
I think they're going in both directions. They're representing the town to the school committee, and they're representing the school district as a whole to the selectmen.
Right.
So they've really got this big Neshoba regional school district constituency, and they've also got their town constituency. And that's different from the selectmen.
And they do listen, and we just,
It's
Kathleen just reported
a very
out.
friendly exchange for us.
It
There's
was
none
very
of
good.
the, we're just like, this is where we are. We listen to, what, we give our concerns, we listen back, and, there's give and play.
And each year, the school committee deliberates many hours on, percentage points, and, we've had years where we've had 0 increases in assessments because of what has been good communication around, where you are and how you're functioning. And then there are some years where it can't happen because of fixed costs, whether it be the 80% or some other factor. It's just, as you know, from your own experiences. So those meetings are helpful, and the communication does go both ways, and it is impactful. So, I would encourage those kinds of board-to-board meetings all the time, that are possible.
Following up on that, is there a way that if there's some magic number, now we're all starting in negotiations with all 3 towns and the district at the same time, whether it's 1 year or 3 years, whatever. I've dealt with local government sort of stuff on and off in various capacities for 30 years, and I always say that the tension comes around a lot of it is because back in the day when there used to be 5% and 6% settlements, pretty routinely back in the 80s, but a particular town would say, okay, we're settling with our police, fire, clerical, whatever the units are, for 5%, and then the school would settle for 7%. Just no particular town, but just as is there any kind of a mechanism where, since we're all starting at the same starting line, negotiating for successor agreements July 1 of 14, could you take into consideration some guidance that could be gleaned from Tri-Town? If the magic number on average that we're shooting for, you're talking about level service, level budget, I mean, I'm not saying we're going to say our goal is settle for 0, but realistically, nobody's going to settle for zeros. You might delay increases, there are split increases, various ways to do things. But it's unrealistic to think that public service employees, just because we're all up against tough times, have to bear the brunt of it. But if there was an average that Tri-Town, maybe not just the chairs, because that gives you a little more freedom of, Stan could call me and have a little discussion, come up with an average number. Was that going to be taken into consideration that the school committee might say, well, our 3 towns are all kind of in this magic number of X. We don't want to be at 2X. Because, ultimately it all has, yes, they have this independence, but they all have to, as you say, they don't print money, they all have to go back to our town meetings.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's the number that matters, is the number that they're willing to approve or
So
not.
ideally, if you had everybody in a happy world settling for 2%, if that's the magic number, it makes it more defensible for everybody at town meeting than it does to say, well, you have one group that's up here and another substantially below that.
Yeah, and that was part of it, is, it's to stand up at town meeting and to say, as the advisory board, that we approve or disapprove, it doesn't matter. But to then further say, oh, by the way, this additional group across all 3 towns agrees, or just, I just think that showing the townspeople that decide to show up at town meeting, that further analysis, and I understand the school committee is there, but getting back to what Stan was saying, there is this feeling of you guys are able to make a decision on the budget and look at the numbers and make a decision on the budget, where that's not the case here. We can look at it, we can rip it apart, and then we turn it over to these guys, and so that's, and this is fine. Again, coming into this meeting, I was less concerned about the actual mechanics of this, on how to get this thing formed. It's more really a function of trying to come up with an agreement that we can move forward on this. That's all it is. So, yeah, just starting to restate myself there.
Well, last comment, no. What is it, chapter 71, is that your, the regional school, provides that whenever the region goes into collective bargaining for its units, that the selectmen of the 3 towns have a representative included in the process. I maybe drew the short straw, but I'm it for this go-around. So when I had the agenda item earlier, I said you can't be reporting, I'm going to be sitting as a participant in the negotiations with both Unit A and Unit C until they reach an agreement. So there is at least a voice in the room that is representative of, and that's embodied in general law. It's not something that this school district said, let's invite a selectman to participate. It's a requirement.
And just to be clear though, because I think this is important, the law actually states that you only get to vote on the contract. The board, the committee feels it's important that you participate. So that's something that's very different, and it's been something that I push for, and the committee agrees to. That it's important that you're there from the beginning, so you know what you're voting on.
Sure.
So I think that's another example of how we're always trying to be open and transparent.
I appreciate that, and go above and beyond the call or the restricted requirements of general law. I'm pleased that that's the case. But my point is that if there is some way that you can communicate through me, I may not be able to. I don't like the expression tail wagging the dog, as Michael said, because we are all creatures of the state when it comes down to that. But at least there is a method of communication and perhaps input or suggestions that might be considered from I hate to say our and their. I mean, we're all we're working for our municipalities in the best interest, whether they're kids from K through 12 or seniors and everybody in between. And so there needs to be as much communication as there is, and I'm glad that this opportunity is there, so that to whatever extent it can be done as constructive and suggestions, I think that might help the communications as well. I'll give you my phone number if you want to.
All right, just given we're at 8:25 now, I'd like to keep things moving. We did miss one agenda item, which was field maintenance, Michael, and that was really coming from the Lancaster folks, just trying to get a handle on fields at the school, how they're maintained, and more for planning purposes of our larger recreational programming.
So for Lancaster?
Lancaster in particular, if the other towns have anything.
Specifically, it's not this, for me, as I look through the school budget and look at the line detail that our finance committee is doing, I don't see a whole lot of detail. And I hear maybe that facilities is a habitual account that, gets tapped into for overruns or maybe things because it's easy and it's capital and it's easy to extract from. So where specifically, there's a lot of capital investment, there's a lot of different.
Field maintenance comes under grounds.
But, what specifically does the district, does your group do to maintenance our local school district fields? Schools, a lot of it we see go into Neshoba, and it's beautiful.
Right, so the majority of our budget does go to Neshoba because it's a district-owned school. In the town-owned schools, we maintain those spaces that are used for recesses. And in Lancaster, for example, historically, I don't know if you call it your town rec board, has done the mowing. We have done, and so it's a bit of it's not written anywhere, but we will go in and do fillings of holes and things like that because our kids use the space for recess. But Lancaster has historically, or that group has historically mowed the lawns.
Okay.
So Bolton, same type of thing. They maintain at the school site, Derby Field. And Stow maintains the Hale baseball field.
What's the history record on that? Do you know, historically, like, is that
That's-
3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20
Ever
years?
since I've been here, so I don't think it was much different before then. I haven't changed it.
Okay.
It's never been raised as a
So
budget.
how do we change that?
Well, you talk to your advisory, because the money would have to come to our accounts to be able to, take it over.
Yeah, because I just, I see 1.4 million in facilities. I don't know what comprises facilities. What is that, outside contracting? There's a lot of different line items.
Right,
that one
I mean,
could
it's all
assume,
those lines.
that might go into paying, outside contractors to mow the front of buildings, but do they mow the back of the building?
We mow all of our buildings. So all the land that's up against the building, we mow.
I guess the
Yeah,
bottom
we
line
can.
is whether Lancaster is directly doing it, or whether you want to transfer it to the district, the money's going to come from Lancaster to pay for that. So you'll be paying for it either way, whether you do it or whether they do it, so.
Well, and a lot of the towns have their, like soccer fields, for example, not at a school. So obviously the towns,
Right, and that makes sense that they would take care of it. I'm
Right.
just kind of curious, our school fields are in horrible condition. I don't think they've ever been maintenanced by any district money. If they have, I would love to see evidence of that. But, I think it's time that we look at and reassess that. And I don't know if it's the same for Bolton or for Stow, but.
yeah, well,
certainly.
Derby Field's in rough shape too, yeah.
And what role our DPW plays in that, if any? I mean, we'll have to have them in
Do
on.
they get a portion of the school district money to do that?
No, but I don't know, what, if anything, they're.
Yeah, they're town,
No, I'm talking about school.
They're town
they're
owned.
still town owned.
The town owns the school. We lease it.
So there's no allocation of funding for that
Not
in your
for,
budget?
not for what you're talking about, which is a rebuild, essentially.
That's
to
why the
get it up
fields are in
to
such
safe.
bad shape.
Right. The town DPWs
So
take
are
care
you
of it.
saying there's no way to fix it with the school budget then, the way the existing structure works?
Right, I mean, we'd have to agree that we're gonna take it on, then we'd have to do an assessment of what it would cost to bring them up to par, the way you wanna have them, and then maintain them like that.
And Orlando will write a check.
Right.
Sure.
And the town voters will say yes or no.
Well, now that the Fed's freed up about 10 billion
There you
today,
go.
so I'll get a small low interest loan there.
That's actually not bad idea.
Yeah. Not as good as the Queb bonds, but it's good.
Yeah.
All right, so I think then might be good for us to get out there and, I guess we need to determine how we want the field to look in the first place and take it from there.
Green would be great.
Okay.
I mean, Bill's happy to meet with you and go over that, and, I mean, we could look at all three fields in that way and look and see if we wanna agree as towns to have the district be responsible as part of our lease.
Yeah, I guess, or would we find another party internally? For recreation to do it, or how they've done it, it's essentially been a volunteer who's got the equipment.
Right.
The problem is with
You
that
can't-
volunteer, you gotta be
Sure.
grateful that they do it, not
Exactly.
saying, by the way, you need to get out there and do that today.
Right.
It's just not gonna work that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Just make a note to call Bill.
Yeah.
School committee representation, I think we're kind of segueing into that.
Who put that on the agenda?
Yeah.
That, I believe Linda emailed that to me.
Well, we had that discussion.
Okay, Dave, you're a representative.
Yeah, I didn't put it on. What got me thinking about this, and I don't know how it got on your agenda, the new Minuteman draft regional agreement has voting on the school board apportioned by enrollment. And our regional agreement has it apportioned by town population.
Correct.
And I once attended a school committee meeting a long time ago when someone defended this on the federal constitution, one man, one vote rule. But I don't think that's really mandatory, given that Minuteman seems, now that their draft agreement hasn't been approved yet. But, and you can find all sorts of other areas where voting in districts isn't based on one man, one vote. I think, Larry, you had an example of a water district or something where it's the amount of water you use or something. You and I talked once about this, but anyways, what we would need to do is reopen the agreement.
Right.
And I think that might be a good idea, but I'm
I agree.
not official, so.
David, are they an appointed board?
The Minuteman?
Minuteman.
Yes, they're appointed by the moderator.
That's the difference. We're an elected board, so we have to follow a constitutional apportionment ruling. They're an appointed board. They can have any development they want.
I've been fighting this 5 years,
Yeah.
just FYI. Because I think it's wrong that we only have 2 reps.
When we have more students.
We have more
budget.
students, we pay more money into the system, none of it makes any sense.
Right.
So there's
And
no way around,
Lancaster's
your 5
population-
years of research, there's no way around this.
So far, the only thing that could happen is if the charter of the district were to be changed. And
The
we would,
charter, is that
Not
the
the
regional agreement? I mean, could we?
It's the regional
the regional agreement.
But it has, I mean, that is true. I mean, that would have to change, but it would have to meet legal standing for an elected official. I mean, one of the ways we could do around it, though, is if it was changed that they were appointed.
Or special legislation, but
Yeah.
even special legislation will probably say it doesn't meet the constitutional criteria.
Right, I mean,
I don't know if we want
Yeah.
to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, that's,
I guess my suggestion would be that since it's Bolton, maybe the selectmen should ask town council to
Sure.
give an opinion on whether there's any way around it. Is that a reasonable thing?
No, that makes sense,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, I don't know if I can get the other 2 of our selectmen to listen to that.
they can get
Dave,
to listen. Period.
Dave suggested that we ought to talk to town council to see if there's a way around this constitutional hurdle.
Well, I mean, you know, I think we should do that, but I mean, you know, if, to Michael's point, if the school committee was appointed, like the advisory committee, we may be able to get around it that way.
Yeah, but
I
again,
mean,
I
we'd
don't-
have to think long and hard about
we have to
that,
look
yeah.
hard about that. I don't know if that's possible.
I
I'm
think
saying
that's a
there's a
state law
difference.
that the school committee.
I think it is too.
I
I
don't
think
know
it
of
is
any
too.
non-elected,
Yeah.
I don't either.
regular school
Right.
committees. Minuteman is not elected.
Right.
Well, we can look.
City of Boston
Yeah,
is important.
but I think
But
if
that's
town
probably not
council
special
would take a look at
Yeah,
that and see if there isn't some way around that,
Yeah,
that federal so-called.
we won't approach it as some way around that.
Yeah.
That's the wrong words
How
to
best
use.
Some special rule.
If there's a valid alternate interpretation.
What is the constitutional means of achieving parity?
Right.
Very good.
Yes.
Then the last item is the future Tri-Town meeting.
Next
And-
one would be in Bolton, the normal rotation.
You coming back, Nancy?
I will, especially if there's an agenda.
There's always an agenda.
What? Well, no, as Don was saying, that sometimes, like, there wasn't a meeting because there were no agenda items.
Oh, yeah.
It's up to the
there's-
chair.
Well, and it seems like, I mean, during the summer, it's pretty slow. I mean, we might want to think about, and during the budget season, certainly, it's.
Well, we don't meet,
What?
we don't meet during the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's typically September through whatever. And maybe, you know, September, October, November, December, there's not a whole lot going on. So I mean, maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be each month during that period. But certainly I would say, you know, definitely January through at least the time we get to town meeting.
Stan, I'll actually put that as an agenda item for next time, the Tri-Town scheduling.
Yeah.
I was gonna suggest maybe that somehow this group had a leader that collected agenda items and made the determination that.
We do, every town.
That rotates. The host.
The host town is.
The host town
is
puts the
for the-
agenda together.
Right.
Sends a notice out to solicit agenda items.
Okay.
And some of us provide cookies.
Yeah.
So January 8th?
Next time I'll be.
January 8th.
Yeah, it's a Wednesday.
Yes.
We don't want to meet on New Year's Day.
No.
January 8th in Bolton.
We have a conflict.
It's agreeable.
That's right. January 8th is
You have a
the,
conflict on
Yeah, we
the
have
8th?
the space committee meeting. So, we can only meet on
Oh,
Wednesdays
that's-
because we have board members on it, so.
Oh, so you're not changing it to Wednesday night? So we
Yeah.
can't,
It's not till the
Typically, we go to
22nd.
these now, so.
no, the January 8th is your meeting.
Are we on January 8th? Or did we say the second?
I thought we were on for the 22nd.
I'll double
oh,
check.
for the space
Classes.
I'll double
needs.
check that, so
I've been filling in, so.
go for the 8th on the tri-town, and either myself or Mr.
So
King.
it's the 22nd, is the next one?
And
And I just-
and
January 8th, Bolton, 7 o'clock.
encourage
Yep.
community
Yep.
members. So we'll try to be collegial.
We'll figure, we'll let you know.
We'll let you
I'm
know.
done my fishing things.
And we'll follow up on space. And I mean, might not be an issue for me as much because I don't know if I'm going all the time, but.
The other ones I
School committee
It's
tonight.
really good.
No other business, Mr. Chairman, I would move to adjourn.
No, let's go home.
Second that.
That's good.